This lecture is about the ATP synthase mechanism, but how the synthesis of ATP occurs by this ATP synthase. As ATP synthase is involved in the synthesis of ATP. So how the synthesis of ATP takes place by this ATP synthase. ATP synthase is also known as complex 5 and is also known as F0 F1 complex. So ATP synthase is always present with the electron transport chain, and these two processes occur simultaneously. When there is the transfer of electrons through the electron transport chain through the oxidation process, at the same time there is the phosphorylation of ADP into ATP. So these two processes are coupled processes. These two processes occur simultaneously. So that's why this whole process is known as oxidative phosphorylation. This electron transport chain is known as oxidation, and this process is known as phosphorylation. So this whole mechanism is known as oxidative phosphorylation. So the protons that are pumped through this electron transport chain into the intermembranous space are collected here, and through the process of chemiosmosis they enter through this ATP synthase, and when they enter into the ATP synthase, the conformational changes, the structural changes occurs inside the ATP synthase, and it leads to the synthesis of the ATP. Let's study the detailed mechanism for the synthesis of the ATP synthase, that how the ATP synthase works for the synthesis of the ATP. If the ATP synthesis occurs through this ATP synthase, it consists of the two parts, right? The ATP synthase has two parts, F0 subunit and F1 subunit. F0 subunit is present inside the inner mitochondrial membrane, and it further has two subunits, A subunit and C subunit. And F1 has three subunits, the gamma subunit surrounded by 3 alpha and 3 beta subunits. Right, so this is the overall structure rotatory motor model for the synthesis of the or for the generation of the ATP. So this ATP synthase has two parts, F0 subunit and F1 subunit, right? So this F0 subunit is embedded inside the inner mitochondrial membrane, right? And this F1 subunit is protruding inside the mitochondrial membrane, right? Okay, so this F0 subunit, it has further two subunits, A subunit and C subunit, right? So this C subunit has further 10 to 14 subunits, right? That basically causes the rotation. It is a rotatory part. This is the movable part in this whole structure of the ATP synthase. The C and the gamma parts are the rotatory. Okay, they causes the rotation. As a result, the conformation changes occurs in this part, in this F1 part. These alpha beta subunits of the F1 part, this part is known as the catalytic part. The ATP synthesis basically occurs in this part, right? The ATP synthesized in this part, right? ADP and together with the adenine diphosphate together with one phosphate, it will form the adenine triphosphate, right? There will be the synthesis of the ATP basically in this part. So in this part, the ATP synthesis takes place by the conformational changes. The rotation is caused by this gamma subunit and this C subunit. Okay, so how this whole process takes place, we will see in detail about this F1 subunit, right? So this F1 subunit, these alpha and beta subunit, as this gamma subunit is surrounded by 3 alpha and 3 beta subunit, right? So this F1 or O in F1 is connected by this stalk, right? So this stalk is connected to this C subunit, is connected to this F1 and F0 subunit, right? So how the synthesis of ATP takes place, as we are going to talk about the mechanism, right? So let's see this, the cross section part of this part, right? So this part is also known as in this part as shown here, this part is also known as the binding change model, right? These alpha and beta subunits that are surrounded by the gamma subunit for the mechanism for the process is known as binding change model. As the name indicates, that the binding, that ADP and organic phosphates will bind, change into ATP, right? So there is the whole mechanism for this process, that how the binding and change occurs by this model, right? So according to the binding change mechanism, 3 beta subunits of F1 ATP synthase adopt different conformations. Basically, as I told you, that the by the transfer of these protons into the matrix, these rotations occurs in the C part, and as a result, the rotation also occurs in this gamma part, because this gamma part is connected to this free part, right? When the rotation occurs only in these two parts, right? And the other parts are, and the other subunits of these ATP synthase are stable, are static, they don't move, right? The rotation occurs only in these parts, and the conformation changes occurs in this part. So how the conformation changes occur in this part, for this is known as binding change model, right? So the conformational changes basically occurs in three forms. There will be open conformation, loose conformation, and tight conformation, right? There will be three conformation, right? Three structural changes. Like it may be present in the open form, it may be present in the loose form, or it may be present in the tight form. As shown in this model, right? This is the cross section of the F1 part of the ATP synthase. As shown here, basically, this is the gamma subunit, right? As in this diagram shown here, this is the gamma unit surrounded by alpha and beta subunit. Okay, in this alpha and beta subunit, this alpha subunit is not involved in the synthesis of the ATP. The alpha subunit contains the ATP, right? It has the permanent ATP present inside the alpha subunit, right? So it is not involved in the generation or the synthesis of the ATP, right? In this whole ATP synthase, the catalysis or basically the formation of ATP occurs in this beta subunit. This beta subunit is responsible or for the synthesis of the ATP. Even the alpha subunit, in the alpha subunit also the ATP synthesis does not take place, right? This ATP, this alpha subunit also contains the ATP, but that is permanently present inside this alpha subunit, right? And that is not involved in the synthesis of the ATP. Now let's talk about this beta subunit. And for the beta subunit, I told you about that there are three conformational changes that occurs by the rotation of this gamma subunit, right? So for the beta subunit, there is the binding change model that it may occur in the three conformational changes होते हैं, right? There is the open form, loose form, and the tight form, right? Because of this gamma rotation, right? So you can see the pointed form of this gamma that indicates the rotation for the gamma form, right? So it may this may occur this beta subunit, right? The alpha subunit is not shown here because the alpha subunit is not involved in the synthesis of the ATP, but alpha subunit is present along with this beta subunit, right? But that has no role in the synthesis of ATP, so that's why the beta subunit is shown here. Okay, so it will occur in the three forms: loose, tight, and open form, right? So how the synthesis of ATP will occur? The ATP synthesis occurs when EDP together combines with the inorganic phosphate. So ADP will bind to this F1 subunit of the ATP synthase when it will be in the loose form, right? The loose form is for the binding of the ADP, right? The ADP and inorganic phosphate will come in the loose form. Involved in this ATP synthesis. The catalytic part is the basically F1, and in the F1 there are the alpha, beta, and gamma. But by the rotation of this gamma, okay, just focus on this gamma and just focus on its pointed form that it will rotate, right? And then this basically because of the beta subunit, right? So beta subunit, it will because of the rotation of this gamma subunit, it has the three conformational changes: loose form, tight form, and open form. So now let's start from the loose form, right? So the loose form basically where is the ADP and inorganic phosphate present. Basically, the open is the part where the ADP and inorganic phosphate come, and open is the part from where the ATP basically leaves. Okay, so in the loose part there is the ADP and organic phosphate present, but they have not reacted yet, right? They have not reacted yet. And what will happen? Let's see to this gamma, the conformation as the proton are moving from the C unit to the inside the matrix, and what will happen? The gamma will cause mutation, and now it causes the rotation, right? Now it is rotated, right? When it will get rotate, now what? But when it will cause the rotation, then this open conformation is converted into the loose conformation, right? And this loose conformation is converted into the tight conformation because of the rotation of this gamma subunit. You can see when it is pointed towards this part, it will always be loose. Now it has rotated. Now what will happen? This loose will become the tight, And when this part becomes tight, there will be the tight association between ADP and organophosphate. It will react and will form the adenine triphosphate. There will be the phosphorylation. That basically this B subunit provides the site for the phosphorylation of this ADP to ATP. Right now the ATP is formed. Now what will happen? Now this gamma subunit will again rotate. Right now the further rotation of this gamma subunit cause this tight subunit into open subunit. Right. So these are just only conformational. Structure conformation. Structure conformation means structural changes that are caused by the rotation of this gamma subunit. Right. As you have seen that the ADP always binds to the loose part, right? Or you can say to the open part, and the ATP leaves from the open part, right? So the loose part ADP and organophosphate binds. Then by the conformation changes of this gamma subunit, this loose parts become the tight part. Then in which the ATP is synthesized, right? Now how this ATP will leave this F1 subunit when the conformation changes again occurs, this gamma again rotates, okay, it will again rotate and then this T form the O subunit, right? ये आपके पास जो है open conformation बन चुके हैं. Now when it is open, ATP will leave from the open part and again this process will continue. ठीक है, आपके पास process जो है वो continue रहेगा. Again there will be the rotation. It is rotated, it is converted to a loose form and then again rotated and it becomes tight form and then O form, right? When so these three conformation changes are present simultaneously. Okay, एक साथ जो है तीनों conformations present होती हैं. When these three conformations are present at one time, then it means that by these three catalytic units, there is the synthesis of the ATP through one rotation. As you can see that through one rotation there will be synthesis of the three ATP. Like at one time, if this is loose, the one will be the tight one, right? And one ATP will be leaving, one ATP will be releasing, right? So one ATP, two ATP, and three ATP. Through one rotation of this gamma subunit, okay, there is the release of the three ATP, right? Because of the structure conformation. Now you understand that how the conformation changes occur. That because of the rotation of this gamma subunit, right? So this gamma subunit, when it causes the rotation, right? So the loose is converting to the tight conformation, the tight is converting into the open conformation, and the same like is for the other parts. So this is how the ADP is converted into ADP, where this is the cross-sectional part of the F1 subunit, right? Like the F1 subunit, it consists of gamma subunit. This triangular part is the gamma, right? And this gamma part is surrounded by the 3 alpha, okay, 1, 2, and 3 alpha, and composed of 3 beta subunits, 1, 2, and 3 beta subunits, right? So the alpha subunits is not involved in synthesis of ATP, but these beta subunits are involved in the synthesis of the ATP, right? So the rotation that is caused by the energy driven by the transfer of the protons from the intermembrane space to the matrix by the C subunit of the FO of the F naught subunit of the ATP synthase, due to which the rotation of the gamma unit occurs. When this gamma subunit causes the rotation, the conformational changes occurs in this beta subunit. That occurs in three forms, right? When it is in the loose form, right, ADP and organic phosphate will bind, right, and then it will become tight ATP and then open. When it gets open, the ATP is released. So that's how these are. So at one rotation of this gamma subunit, three ATPs are synthesized, right? Then ADP, then it will cause rotation. This loose will become tight, and then tight in the tight form, the ATP synthesized, and then after the rotation, when it again rotates, then what will happen? This fully synthesized ATP will be released only in the open conformation. So it means that the energy is required basically for the open conformation, because for the open conformation for the O, there is the release of the ATP. When you require the ATP, the energy is required for the release of the ATP in the form of open conformation, right? This is the whole mechanism for the synthesis of the ATP, that how ATP synthesized by this ATP synthase, that the protons into the intermembrane space through chemiosmosis process are taken up by this F naught subunit, right? And that will be transported inside the into the matrix, right? And after transferring to the matrix, what will happen that this ATP synthase has three alpha and three beta subunits, and the catalytic site is the beta subunit. That the conformation changes occurs because of mutation of this gamma subunit, right? As the gamma subunit in this the rotation causes it into the three forms: open form, tight form, and loose form. Here it is in the open form. Now what will happen? The ATP will bind an inorganic phosphate. Okay, ATP inorganic phosphate will form and bind to this in this open form. Okay, then it will become loose, and then let's just have a look at it that EDP and inorganic phosphate are coming. It will bind into the loose, and then to the conformation of this gamma subunit, it will become tight. ATP is formed, and then ATP is released in the open form. Okay, now this rotation causes this subunit into the open form. When it gets open, the ATP is released. Right. So all this synthesis about this part is all about the conformational changes, and that conformation changes occurs by the rotation of this gamma subunit. And gamma subunit is caused mutated because of the this C unit, and this C unit rotation occurs by these protons. Okay, these protons, from where these protons come? These protons basically comes from the chemi osmosis process. Okay, like by the oxidation of the by the oxidation of the different components of the electron transport chain, right?